7-time WWE Women's Champion, 1-time WWE Hardcore Champion, WWE Hall of Fame Class of 2013, Babe of the Year in 2001 and 2003, Diva of the Decade in 2003, ranked number 1 of the top 50 greatest WWE female superstars of all time in 2021, Pro Wrestling Illustrated Woman of the Decade from the years 2000 to 2009, Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Woman of the Year in 2002, 2003, 2005, and 2006. Whew! Did everyone get a breather after that one? We are speaking about one of, if not the greatest, WWE female superstar of all time. My name is Josh Robinson here for Love Wrestling. Ladies, gentlemen, my non-binary friends, buckle up. This one's going to be good. We're discussing the legacy of Trish Stratus. On the March 19th, 2000 episode of Sunday Night Heat, Trish Stratus made her WWE debut. What we didn't really expect is that over the next 6 years, Trish Stratus would become one of the greatest female superstars in WWE history. Now, last week we did talk about Lita's legacy, and of course, these two just kind of go hand in hand throughout their careers, making a debut within a month of one another and ending their careers within months of one another. Their legacies just kind of go hand in hand. They're just there every step of the way. Trish Stratus, of course, would come in from the world of fitness modeling, and she would have this kind of name about herself about being a wrestling fan over in Canada on various different radio shows and talk shows and just TV shows. She was a wrestling fan. It was kind of common knowledge. WWE would reach out, and of course, she come in with no wrestling experience, or very little wrestling experience, I should say, and come into this world of not really knowing what to really expect outside of being a fan and the very little training that she did. Throughout the years of 2000 and 2001, she would be, of course, with TNA, Test and Albert, and that was her introduction into the world of WWE, but of course would move into wrestling roles throughout the years of 2001. She would wrestle with Lita, she would wrestle against Lita throughout her early time, wrestle Stephanie McMahon in one of the more interesting matches at No Way Out in 2001. Both very green performers and putting on a kick-ass match with the little experience they had in the ring from both Stephanie and Trish. Now, Stephanie and Trish's legacies would also kind of line up as well. When Trish was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2013, Stephanie McMahon was the one who inducted her. She was chosen by Trish Stratus to be her inductor. But, you know, I digress into other areas. Now, Trish Stratus would be known as the bombshell. She was the one that looked great and the typical quote-unquote diva. She was the look that WWE were aspiring for all their women in that time period, because they wanted women who were just sex appeal, who, you know, wrestling ability wasn't really what they were looking for at that time. However, Trish Stratus would, of course, take her first ever WWE Women's Championship at Survivor Series in 2001 in a match in a six-pack challenge that I believe every wrestling fan just has knowledge of. If you watch wrestling in that time, you have knowledge of this six-pack challenge, because the WWE Women's Championship at the time was vacant from China leaving, and then Trish Stratus would take it in 2001. She didn't hold the title for all that long, but this was of course the first of 7 WWE Women's Championship reigns, an accolade that was not broken for a very long time in WWE. Now, Trish Stratus would kind of take on more of a wrestling role in the years of 2002 and 2003. That's when we really seen Trish really amp up her wrestling style, and we kind of got to watch Trish grow. That's what I really love about Trish Stratus, is that we got to watch her evolution of just how she wrestled, just how she spoke, just how she acted in the ring. There was so much to Trish Stratus that we got to watch her grow up, and it was so cool to watch as a fan, and fans really got behind that, whether she was a babyface or, personally, I know it's subjective, but I love Trish Stratus as a heel, or as a heel. But we got to see so many things from Trish over these 2002 to 2003 years and really come into her own as a wrestler, especially in this time when the women were getting a little bit more opportunity. Let's just be honest here. I know a lot of people look at this time and years after and even years before as just like women were just eye candy. And yes, I'm not going to argue that they weren't. They definitely were there for that reason. But there was a lot of women at this time who they were getting small chances here and there to have hardcore matches. You've seen Trish Stratus work with the likes of Victoria in hardcore matches several times, both in street fight and hardcore match variations. But you got to see that in 2002 and 2003. They were having WrestleMania matches that weren't just evening gown matches or just, fluffy little diva segments. They were literally getting the chance to have triple threat matches with WrestleMania 18 and 19. Trish Stratus both involved in both of those. So they had opportunities here. You had the likes of Molly Holly, Lita, Trish Stratus, Gail Kim, Jazz, Victoria, Jacqueline, Ivory, the list goes on and on here with the amount of women that could actually work. They do call it the kind of golden era of women in that time because they were given small chances to succeed. Of course, when we talk about those small chances, we have to talk about what we talked about last week with Lita. It'd be remiss not to at least mention the fact that Trish and Lita were acknowledged and really is the first ever WWE Women's match to main event Monday Night Raw on December 6th in 2004. They killed it, by the way, too. For anyone that hasn't watched that match or hasn't watched that match in a long time, flip it over on the network or Peacock, wherever you are in the world, and find that match, December 6th, 2004. It really does hold up, even in the time that we're in now, where women are just consistently kind of killing it across the board in wrestling. But they killed it, and it holds up, and it's great, and it's a moment that we will never ever forget to see that play out in Lita's home state and the way it all happened. Trish Stratus in that time was a heel in 2004 after aligning earlier in 2004 with the one and only Christian at WrestleMania 20, turning on Chris Jericho. And Trish would take this year and a half kind of reign of being the top woman in WWE and being the top heel in WWE. A lot of her character work, I think, is best here as a heel. I know a lot of people don't agree with that. You can let me know in the comments if you do, but a lot of people don't agree with that statement, but I really love Trish as a heel, and I just love that she was just that. Yes, it was very stereotype and whatever it may be. However, it was a lot of fun, and Trish did that role really well. Now, Trish, of course, and Lita would have their feud for a little while before Lita got injured. Trish would gain the championship at the very beginning of 2005 and hold it all the way until WrestleMania 22 in 2006. She had that championship for over 400 days. In this day and age, long championship reigns just aren't as common as they were back in the 70s and the 80s per se. But in this time, in 2005, the mid-2000s, Trish Stratus had a championship for that long, and the only other person having championship reigns for that long was John Cena. Think about that. And that was in Cena's infancy of his title reigns and being the guy in WWE. But John Cena was the only one you could really look at as someone who held the championship for that long. Trish Stratus was the woman. Lita, of course, doing other things with Matt Hardy and Edge. Trish Stratus was the woman. She was guiding a division. She was working with a lot of newer talent. She was working with a lot of familiar talent in that year and a bit that she was WWE Women's Champion. Now, we have to discuss what happened at WrestleMania 22 and the latter part of WWE's Trish Stratus's WWE Women's Championship reign is that she was working with a very new talent known to WWE audiences. Of course, I'm mentioning, the one and only Mickie James. They would work together from October of 2005 right in to the early part of 2006, of course, having a match at WrestleMania 22, one of the greatest female WrestleMania matches of all time. Mickie James would end the iconic reign of Trish Stratus in 2006 at WrestleMania. Pretty damn cool stuff to have a story with that much drive and that much attention and that much time given to it to let it develop. They had a couple of matches beforehand at New Year's Revolution in 2006, but nothing really. It was just kind of to move the story along. They weren't having matches every single week. Of course, that crazy stalker kind of angle. This would not have been possible without Trish Stratus's legacy behind her, because Trish Stratus had built up so much equity in WWE of being the woman that it really wouldn't have made sense to do it with anybody else but Trish. So I think it's a lot of it's a lot of praise in Trish Stratus' direction to be able to guide that story, especially with a brand new talent. That's very hard to do, to get someone that consistently over in the likes of Mickie James. That's what Trish Stratus did in that time with Mickie. But Trish did so many more things within her time. She was the woman. She's often looked back to, you look at all the interviews that happen with the likes of today's talent, and they always bring up the fact that they look up to Trish Stratus. They want to be like Trish Stratus. They want to emulate Trish Stratus. Of course, there's others in the conversation as well, but Trish is always just a go-to for so many people and so many talented women that are wrestling right now that we see every single week, whether it be on Dynamite or NXT, Raw, SmackDown, Impact, doesn't matter. They all look at Trish Stratus as a milestone they want to get to. They want to be as good as Trish Stratus. They want to be better than Trish Stratus. She was named the greatest WWE female superstar in the eyes of WWE in this year on a network special. And I think it's very earned, it's very deserved, and it's very much warranted, the fact that she got named that. Now, Trish, of course, would wrestle sparingly throughout her retirement, from her retirement in 2006 up until now. Of course, we've seen her pop up on Raw here and there. We've seen her wrestle at WrestleMania 27 in that snooky mixed tag 6-person thing that happened. And of course, we would see her in the first ever all-women's Royal Rumble in 2018. She is the first woman to enter at number 30. You can't take that away from her in the first ever all-women's Royal Rumble. Seen her wrestle at Evolution along with Lita to take on Alicia Fox and Mickie James. And then, of course, we'd see her wrestle one final time in her farewell match against Charlotte Flair at SummerSlam in 2019 in Toronto, hometown, home country of Canada, in a fantastic match, by the way. I love the fact that Trish got to tie up her career in a nice little bow and say, this is it for me, and have an absolutely incredible performance with Charlotte Flair. Again, in her home country, in her hometown, you can't really write it any better. Trish Stratus is the greatest of all time in a lot of people's minds for a reason. She is so phenomenally talented and just so... She is that woman. She is just that woman in this time period, and even still to this day, multiple people will argue this, but is the greatest WWE Women's Champion of all time. So much love in the world from me for Trish Stratus, and there was no way I could do this series without having an episode dedicated to the one and only, the stratifying Trish Stratus. I hope this episode has left you stratified the best way I can. I mean, I can't do it like Trish, but I hope I can give you at least 90% stratisfaction. There was a 90% satisfaction guaranteed from me here, right? Yeah? Man, poor attempt at humor. Anyway, of course, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up here on YouTube. It lets the algorithms know that we're doing a good job here on Love Wrestling. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, so you get notifications of when we are dropping new videos here on Love Wrestling. Let me know in the comments what you think about Trish Stratus and her legacy. Also, let me know what you think about this series and who you want to see covered on this series. We have something very special planned for next week, and I should let everybody know the times are changing slightly. It's still going to be a Monday in Australian time land, but it's going to be Monday morning. So for a lot of you guys in the States and that aren't in Australia, I should just say, it's going to be dropping Sunday nights now, every single episode of The Legacy of, so you get it slightly earlier. End your weekend right, I guess. Or start your day off if you are in Australia, because it's dropping still on Monday mornings here in Australia. That's all I have to cover here. Yeah, that's all. Of course, my name is Josh Robinson, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Legacy of. Hit me up on Twitter at JoshRobinson_00. Hit Love Wrestling up on Twitter at LoveWrestlingCA. All of the links, of course, will be in the description box below. Now, next week, here on The Legacy of, something very special is happening. Very special. I'm going to keep it to myself for now, but stay posted to my Twitter, because I can tell you this with all of my heart. Next week's episode is something you'd never, ever guess. And I say that with all confidence. Until next Monday, guys, I'm signing off. Peace out.